biggest question I had for you, because it's about the VA entitlement. And I know the entitlement is the X amount of what the county is, but there's a difference, isn't there, between full entitlement and partial?
Sure.
How does that work in the VA?
So full entitlement is your full entitlement, or like your entitled amount. So I don't know, is it every county, or I think it's every state has a different entitlement amount. So let's just say, for this purpose, $500,000 for the state of Utah. That's how much you can use for the VA loan. So entitlement is using all of it for your VA loan. Partial is usually using partial amount of that, say $200,000, but your house is $300,000. Then you have to bring $100,000 in cash.
So here's my question though: veterans, okay? Does everyone who qualifies for VA get full entitlement for that county?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that actually is one thing I want to explain is entitlement. So the way entitlement works in the VA loan is that there is the county is $832,000 for Iron County the last time I checked, and it does change. But the way it works is that the magic number is 25%. So VA guarantees that if you default on the loan, they'll give you 25% back. So here's how, just rough numbers. You purchase your first house, let's say for $400,000. Well, you still have $430-something thousand left over in entitlement on the second house, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you did.
Yep.
So that's basically how it works. I was under the assumption that you had to be X amount or a certain rank to get the full amount, but that's not true.
No.
Gotcha. So
as long as you're honorably discharged, you get all the VA benefits.
And to qualify for VA loan, to get entitlement to VA, two things. You've got to be either deployed or been in service for 6 years. Mm. So there is a myth. Do home sellers, they don't like VA offers?
In my experience, I wouldn't say that they don't like VA offers. Or it's not that they don't like them. The appraisal process can be a little more strenuous than a normal appraisal.
Gotcha. Is it take longer? Why is it more strenuous?
Sometimes it can take longer. You have to have a VA approved appraiser, but also they're a little more picky on what they ask for improvements on. So in my experience, we've had to repaint a fence because of flaking fence.
Yep.
And also a drawer didn't close correctly, so we had to correct the drawer. So they're just a little bit more strict on what they'll approve and not approve as far as repairs go.
Gotcha. And from the lending side, when we do a normal conventional loan or whatever, our company can actually, they go out and find the appraiser, but then when I go get a VA one, I have to actually go through the VA website to find the appraiser they pick. Yep. Right? So here's the other thing. Are appraisals stricter when it comes to VA?
I would say yes, they're stricter, but not in such a way that they're going to kill a deal. When it comes to VA, you're going to want to pick a house that is in at least good shape. You don't want to fixer-upper because then, that's not going to ever get approved. But, if you just pick a house, if it's just cosmetic things, they're going to kind of be after that. And the seller has to know that they'll probably have to be fixing some of that stuff too.
Yeah. In my experience, the inspector, the VA, they have to have it in livable condition. Yeah. You have to be able to move in. So if there's no heat, electrical problem, right. If you have peeling paint like you ran into, it has to be livable condition for you to move in. That is why they want you to do it, because it has to be your primary residence. Can VA buyers ask for closing costs without it breaking the deal?
Yes. You can. In fact, I think it's up to 4% you can ask in closing costs. And even if those don't all go towards closing costs, your lender can figure out somewhere to put that. So.
Yeah. So just to clarify, it's 4% of the purchase price is what you're allowed. So, 4% of the purchase price, and that is up to the real estate agent, right, to negotiate that with the seller.
Correct.
And that you guys can go back and forth. Hey, I'll do 2, and then hopefully you'll counter with 3. Yeah. It goes back, right? Yep. So big tip, don't forget to ask your real estate agent if the seller can pay closing cost.
Correct, yeah.
And it depends on the market, right, too?
Right, yeah.
If it's a hot market and they got 3 offers on the table, that actually might break the deal.
Right.
Just depends,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Got to be competitive. So.
Really what it is rely on your real estate agent to negotiate. Yeah. Go with what their best advice is. Do VA buyers do anything to screw up a deal? Have you ever had that ever happen?
Do VA buyers do anything to screw up a deal? I in my experience, I haven't experienced any buyers screwing up a deal. I'm sure there's some instances where that could, potentially happen. If they're not really willing to work with the seller or anything like that, I guess. But
so a VA buyer versus a normal buyer, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, it's basically
there
the
is
same.
no really big difference.
Not at all. Yeah, in fact, I'm more, inclined to work with a VA buyer just because I think everybody on the VA side of things, it might take longer, but they want to get things done.
Tell me a little bit about your experience. You specialize. You've worked with a lot of VA buyers. Tell me a little bit about your history, what you've done with the VA loan in your own life.
Yeah, sure. So I've used it personally quite a few times. So I got into investing while I was still in the military, and I actually used my VA loan to buy my first rental property.
So investing means real estate investing.
Correct, real estate investing, buy and hold rentals, to be more specific. With the VA, that's what you have to do. But so I was stationed in San Diego, bought my first property. My family lived in it while I left for deployment. We literally closed the Friday before I left. So closed on a Friday. That following Friday, I left on a 10-month deployment. Yeah, so I actually never even got to live in that house.
So you bought a car and never drove that car.
Exactly. So my wife and kids lived there while I was on deployment.
Where'd you buy that house?
It was in St. George, Utah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was in St. George, and then when I got back from deployment, I still had a year left of service. They moved out there. We used it as our rental, and that was our first rental. And then, so that was the first time I used the VA loan. I was under the assumption that you couldn't use it more than once, and then I found out through a friend of mine in the military that you could. So then we went and bought a duplex with our VA loan as well. So we had those 3 under the VA loan.
So this is important. You've actually answered 2 questions, 2 myths. The first myth a lot of people believe is that you can't use it twice.
Correct, yeah.
And we talked about that with entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
So what you did, again, so everyone can kind of keep the math straight, let's say you bought your first house for $400,000. You were able to keep it because you lived there for a year. You made that into a rental. Then you had an extra $400-something thousand left over to buy the next move.
Correct, yeah.
And then you moved and lived there for a year. That's how you got started.
Correct, yeah. That's how I got started.
Awesome. Now I want to clarify another myth in VA. Can you buy a multi-unit?
Yes, you can. So under the VA, you can buy up to a quadplex or 4 units. As long as one is your primary residence, you can do from a single family up to a quadplex, the tri and duplex in between as well. So yeah, for anybody getting started that has a VA loan, go buy a quadplex because it's the best thing you could do.
Wow. Yeah. Your second one was a quad or a duplex?
Duplex. So I didn't know you could buy a quadplex at the time, or else I would have. So yeah, I went from single to duplex, and then I actually bought another single family with the VA loan.
Wow. Wow.
I got 4 rentals.
How many do you have now?
12.
You have 12 rentals.
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
It's very impressive to be able to make that work. And right now I have 2 investment properties. And it's
That's
actually
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
My first house, I bought that house. I'm renting it out. I'm calling my house I live in now an investment property because I'm actually cash flowing my Airbnb in my
There
basement.
You go. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's house hacking. It's another form of investment.
Yeah. Have you read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. He haunts me at night.
Yeah.
Your home is a liability unless it's cash flow.
Correct.
I was like, how do I make that work?
Yeah.
Because it's actually cool that Airbnb is paying my mortgage.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly positive, but I'm not negative. So that's kind of cool.
That is awesome.
Mortgage free, right? The way this works is like I work for a mortgage broker. I find people to get a loan. and then I'm a broker, so I can find multiple lending companies that will lend the money. The way the VA works is I find a loan, okay, the VA is going to guarantee 25%. That if you defer, you're 25%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's pretty much I'm picking, choosing, we're getting the right loan for you, and then we kind of layer the VA benefit. Hey, this is guaranteed. The cool thing about that is it makes it more attractive for that lender. They're going to do some things for you. They like that, so they hopefully will give you, they want to incentivize you with a bit either better rate. What's more important to them is two things: your debt to income ratio, or do you have, what that really means is, do you have residual income, enough income to cover that payment? So you may be good payment history, your credit score is not great, but they're incentivized to help you out. That is what's so cool with these VA loans is if you're VA, you may not have a really amazing credit score, but you got good history and you got good income, you got enough for the payment, they're going to basically, they want that because 25% is guaranteed. It's a lot less risky for them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Gavin, what are a few things VA buyers can do that might ruin a deal?
So I think kind of, we'll call it over-negotiating is what I always like to call it, when you kind of add, a contingency inside the contract where if you have to sell your house in order to buy this one, that one could kill a deal. And also kind of how we talked earlier about overpriced, or depending on the market, if you ask for closing costs or too much closing costs, I think that could kill a deal as well. Especially, because on the seller side, they'll want to raise the price, and then if it goes out of appraisal, then we really got another issue, because then we got to bring cash to the table. So,
Gotcha. What should VA buyers do before they tour a house?
So first off, you want to get with an approved lender, or a lender that you are good with, to kind of do get pre-approved. When we go through that whole process, then you're going to want to make sure that the houses that you are choosing to go look at are going to be, as Kate said earlier, in livable condition or close to where we can just do some cosmetic repairs.
And you as an agent can help them do that, right?
Correct. Yeah, we can do that. We'll sit down. I usually bring them in. We sit down. We vet houses. We go through. You don't want to look more than like 4 or 5 around. Every time you go look at houses, so we just minimize that. Pick your top 4 or 5, then we'll go take a look at them, make sure that they can fit within the VA structure, and go from there.
And just a little more about that. When it comes to you and your agent going out shopping for houses, this is what the VA appraisal guy's going to look for. Not the appraisal, the inspector, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to want it safe, sound, and sanitary. You need to be able to move in ready on day one. That means if they got a heating problem, you got leaks in the roof, broken windows. That's what VA is looking for. And that's what he's looking for. Mm-hmm. So the myth is, are they super strict? Not really. They're just there to be like, okay, is this ready to move in? Mm-hmm. So there is a difference between being pre-qualified and being pre-approved. Pre-qualified means, yeah, we kind of generally have a good idea where you're at, and that's what most lenders do. But one way to really stand out and be a lot more competitive is be pre-approved. You're ready, you're rocking. You have all the documents to me. I've got you through my underwriter. We know for a fact you're ready. What that does is that sets you up to when you make an offer, we can turn around and actually get that loan, that whole deal closed faster. So for real, this is what's really different with where I work. What's really cool, by the way, is that the average loan, from loan estimate to close, Gavin, takes a normal company 20 to 25 days. Our average is 10 to 15. The way we do that is because we get them they're ready to rock. They got all their documents ready. You make an offer, 15 days later, they're good to go. Yeah. One way to really set you apart to a seller is have your stuff ready to buy, because then this guy is super serious. That's one way to negotiate. Hey, this guy has a pre-qual letter. We're not so sure. This guy actually has all his documents ready, right? There's 4 things that make a VA different, okay? The first thing is that they guarantee 25%. So if you default on your loan, they'll pay 25%. That makes it super or a lot less risky for that lender. We talked about that. Mm-hmm. That helps you as the buyer. They usually offer you a little bit either better rate. They offer you, you're a lot less risk of a buyer, so they're willing to be a little more negotiable on your credit score, your debt to income. The other thing that's really different with the VA loan is there is no mortgage premium, or there's no mortgage insurance, excuse me. That saves you $200, $300, maybe $400 a month on your monthly payment. What mortgage insurance is, if you default on your loan, you're paying every month for insurance to have that lender recoup it. You don't have to pay that as a VA. Everyone else does, so you're not paying an insurance company in your mortgage payment. Saves you money every month. The other really cool thing is there is no down payment for a VA loan. There is a funding fee. It's about 2.5% roughly. Just depends. But there is no down payment. And that funding fee, you can actually wrap that into the loan. That's what majority of everyone does, is they wrap that into the loan. Also, if you had a what do they call that? You were injured, Purple Heart, or on disability, they waive that. Or if there was a spouse, it's like DIC, something where they lost someone, and they also qualify to get those funding fees taken away. So another myth with a VA loan is you can't buy a condo. Is that true?
No, that's not true. You can buy a condo, but it has to be VA approved, or a VA approved condo. The HOA and everything has to be VA approved. Even if you come across a condo that you like and it's not under the VA guidelines or VA approved, you can do the work to get that one approved. It'll just take you longer. So.
What would you tell someone who's wanting to buy a condo in your experience? Like, they want to do investment properties.
Sure.
What would you tell them?
So I would tell them to avoid it.
Why?
Unless you're going to get multiple condos in the deal, I would not buy a single condo. You can actually cash flow better outside in a single family house, but I wouldn't even recommend that either. At least go for a duplex or above. The reason why not a condo, a lot of times you have to use cash because the condo will have a rule where, I can't remember exactly, but 80% of the owners have to be occupied owners, not investors. So you only get 20%. So if they're out of that threshold and you're trying to buy a condo to rent it out, you can't get a loan on it. You have to pay cash for that condo, for one. So now you're out $150,000 in cash. How long is it going to take you to recoup that? In my experience, condos don't really appreciate very well, and it's all market dependent, of course, but they appreciate it at a much lower rate than single families or duplexes or even quadplexes. So I would stick to the multifamily over a single condo. If you can get 20 condos, by all means, take advantage of that.
Now, tell me exactly what is a condo? So someone's going out looking. What exactly is a condo?
Yeah, condo, I don't know the exact terms that specify it, but it's just basically almost like apartment buildings, multiple apartment buildings that are just kind of sold as single-family homes for the most part. But I don't know the actual terms behind it.
So those townhomes. So a townhome, what I've seen townhomes, they have multi-units. Even some of them may have a single-car garage,
sure,
but they're all connected. Is that considered a condo?
No, they're all one level. Condos are multiple levels, almost like an apartment building, I guess I could say.
Oh.
Yeah, so like there's not very many of them here in town. There's condos over by the skate park, and then there's condos out on Highway 56. And those ones are newer, but yeah. So it's more of an apartment building setup where there's multiple tiers of single family houses, and rather than a single line of townhomes.
So Gavin, we talked about the difference between a condo and a townhouse, right? Condos, from what you just said, is they're like an apartment building. There's multiple levels. You got to walk up and do your thing. Whereas a townhouse, I imagine a townhouse has their own entry. Can we put it that way?
Yeah.
So these buyers can kind of tell the difference, right? And you can still buy a condo. It's tough, right, if you want to do investment property. But you can do it, apparently, if you get that complex approved. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference, or what makes a lot more sense for cash flow or investment or whatever, an investment property where you rent it out versus a flip?
It depends on your goals as an investor. So let's just say my goal right now is more cash flow. I want to be able to get to my freedom numbers, as I like to call it. So I'm trying to, accumulate as many buy and holds as possible, that cash flow, to build that up. A flip is kind of more so I used earlier on. If I needed capital, I would go find a flip. It would take me a month or two maybe to do, the repairs or cosmetics, and sometimes it's different, depends on the property. But that's usually a more large lump sum of capital rather than cash flow over a long period of time. So it depends on your goals.